Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to welcome you all to the second session of the BASL Book Reading and Lawyers Book Club, organized by the BASL Member Networking Committee, chaired by Mr. Pasindu Silva, Attorney at Law, and co-chaired by Ms. Himali Urugodawatha, Attorney at Law, and convened by Ms. Yohani Yoharaja, Attorney at Law, and Mr. Matthew David, Attorney at Law. The Lawyers Book Club is a space created for members of the legal profession to take a step away from the demands of daily practice and reconnect with the worlds of books and ideas. It is a monthly forum where lawyers, whether lifelong readers or just curious minds, can come together to explore literature across genres, reflect on different themes, and engage in open, thoughtful discussions. This is not a space that requires preparation or perfection. Whether you've read every page or are simply here to listen and discover something new, the Lawyers Book Club is for everyone. It is a space to pause, share, and find connection through the power of stories. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce our featured author today, Dr. Carmel Miranda, a truly inspiring individual whose journey bridges the worlds of medicine and literature in a remarkable way. Born and raised right here in Colombo, Dr. Miranda completed her primary and secondary education at St. Bridget's Convent and went on to pursue her medical degree at the Faculty of Medicine, University of Colombo. She later specialized anesthesia through the Postgraduate Institute of Medicine, and today she continues to serve as a practicing consultant in the private healthcare sector. But Dr. Miranda is not only a healer by a profession, she is also a storyteller at heart. A lifelong reader with a particular love for crime fiction and murder mysteries, she eventually turned her curiosity into creative expression. Wondering what it might be like to write a novel of her own, she embraced the challenge and in December 2020 published her debut novel Crossmatch. That did not go unnoticed. Crossmatch won the Gratiaen Prize in 2020 and the State Literary Award for Best English Novel the same year, and was longlisted for the Dublin Literary Award in 2022. Most recently, she was featured at the inaugural Ceylon Literary Festival held in Colombo and Kandy earlier this year. Last year, yes. Dr. Miranda's work blends the science with the empathy of storytelling, and we are honored to have her with us today to explore her award-winning novel and the reflections behind it. The theme for today's session is Science and Creative Arts.
Thank you, Aniras.
So, to give you an idea how today's proceedings would go on, we will begin with a small discussion with the author about the book and the background, and then it will be followed by a reading of the book by the author itself. Again, a discussion with the author. Afterwards, we will definitely open the floor for an interactive discussion where you all are invited to share your thoughts, questions, or simply impressions. We'll close this session with some reflection from the author and wrap up with the look ahead on what's next with our book club. So thank you once again for being here today. Well, you marks the starting of the
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Aniras.
I assume most of us gathered here today have a question. having heard you who you are and where you are from. Let's begin with that. Isn't it unusual for you as a practicing doctor and a science background to write a novel?
Um, yes, that's a good question, Aniraz. And the answer is actually, when you think about it, it's not that unusual because I think all scientists or in science, there has to be an element of creativity. Because if you take scientific inventions, scientific hypotheses, how did this happen if the scientists didn't think creatively? I mean, look at Leonardo da Vinci, right? He was an artist and he was a scientist as well. And his inventions and his art, he's well known for both of them. So I think it's not that unusual, except that people don't think that science and creativity are connected, but I think they are very much so. And the other thing about that um, question you asked, isn't it unusual? You know, I thought so myself, but then when looking into it, I realized that for doctors to write novels is nothing new. There's a very long history of this. And if you look back in history, I mean, if you take who I think is like the greatest fictional detective, Sherlock Holmes, he was invented, created by a doctor himself. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was a physician. And there are so many examples. I don't know what it is. There must be something about doctors wanting to write. And a lot of these are actually crime and mystery things. There's Robin Cook. I don't know whether you probably too young to remember, but back in the 70s, uh, there was a huge series of medical thrillers, and I don't know whether you've heard of Coma. It was a classic um, medical thriller set in a hospital, and Robin Cook, who's the author, he was a doctor as well. And I can tell you a lot of other examples. Um, the Kite Runner, you must have heard of that, right? He's Khalid Hussain. He's also a doctor, so it's nothing new, although it seems unusual.
Yes, I think now I gather what you. Yes, thank you for that. So, the next question, have you always been a writer, or is this your first attempt? Per se?
Um, no, I haven't always been a writer, and this is my first attempt at writing something creative. And um, I, I don't know. I mean, there's nothing to explain there because I never wrote anything before this. But at some point in my life, I suddenly decided that I would like to write a novel, and I didn't have any background in writing. I mean, I was busy with first medical studies and then postgraduate studies and then practicing as a doctor, family. And I've always been interested in reading though, and that never stopped. Although I maybe reduced the amount of reading at different points in my life, but I think reading a lot automatically leads to this urge, and that's the only way I can explain it. But I don't have any training or background in writing. I never did it, professionally or anything before. So it was my first attempt, and I was lucky that people liked it and it became so successful.
If I pose the question, how long the whole process was? How long?
So of writing the book.
Yes.
So when I started to write the book, I didn't have, I wasn't sure that it would end up as a published book. All I thought in my mind was, let me see if I can write something. And you all already mentioned in my bio that I love crime and mystery So I wanted to write something in that genre because I thought it's in crime and mystery, there's always a puzzle, and the reader has to try and solve the puzzle. And I always been fascinated with that kind of stories. So I thought, let me see if I can write. And this was a very slow process, and I think it took about 5 or 6 years. But many of those months in that 5 or 6 years was just me not even looking at it. If if I didn't write every day, sometimes during busy times I wouldn't even look at it for a month or two, and then I'd go back to it. And because I didn't really have an end point in mind, like I have to publish this book or anything, I didn't know whether it would be good enough. So I was just experimenting, really.
I think we all have something to learn from that, that we all should start something at one point and look forward to it,
And
right?
see where you go. You never
Yeah,
know where
you
it'll
know.
end up.
Exactly. Yes, that's very insightful. Thank you for that. I think it's about time we hear from you. I now invite you to begin the reading of the book.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll read from the book. For the first reading, I thought I'll maybe read a couple of sections. The problem is it being a mystery novel. I can't read bits of it which give the story away. So I had to select parts of the book which don't really give any spoilers. So, shall I just explain a little bit about the book before I start? So basically, the book is I mean, it's fiction, and it tells the story of a medical student who is going around not very interested in her work, as many students are. And she never really wanted to do medicine. Her father was very keen on her doing medicine, so she ended up. That's also the story of a lot of students in universities nowadays.
That's quite common, I can say.
And but she is very curious, and so we have two threads. One is her story, how she ended up there, her family background, and there are some issues in her. She has lost her mother, and her day to day life as a medical student. And we see her going to the wards, seeing patients, and attending classes and things like that. And along this, while she's doing this, she stumbles upon a mystery. There's a death, there's always a death in the hospital, but this one was unusual, and something about it strikes her. And so she digs a little bit more into who this patient was who died, and uncovers things which she wants to look into. So that is the mystery side of the story. The other side is her day-to-day life as a medical student. So those parts I can read without giving too much away of the story.
Yes, sure.
So this is from the very beginning of the book. Okay, in the beginning, she's in the labor ward. Okay, and that's how the book starts. I think about the baby, and she's narrating. It's first person, so when she says "I," it's the person. It's her. I think about the baby and wonder what it will be named. I know the naming process is likely to be involved. The parents might consult an astrologer who will be informed of the date, place, and precise time of birth. Using this information, he will draw up an astrological chart, the horoscope, a map of the heavens at the particular moment in time the child was born. He will then pick a set of auspicious letters or sounds from which the parents will choose one to be the first part of their offspring's name. If the child is lucky, it will escape relatively unscathed with a name that is short, simple, and easy to pronounce. But more often than not, it would be long and unwieldy, a slew of syllables strung together. Or they might simply name the child after a popular cricketer or a film star, or worse, a politician. Even so, it would be better off than me, for I had been named after something dull and unexciting, an institution, a hospital actually. The story that I had been told went something like this. After years of trying to have a baby, my parents had consulted a string of the best specialists in the country, only to be told that my mother would never be able to conceive. But then, a well known doctor, the owner of an establishment called the Lotus Nursing Home, had treated her and achieved the impossible. And in gratitude, my mother had bestowed on her miracle baby, me, the name Lotus. Why do parents burden their offspring with names that they misguidedly think would make them, the offspring, special? Okay, I know the lotus is a beautiful flower, sacred to many religions and all that, but it's just not me. When I hear the name, I picture a super fast sports car or the love child of dreamy ganja smoking parents. As far as I knew, my parents had been fairly ordinary, hardworking doctors at the time of my birth. So couldn't they have picked an ordinary, simple name for me? For the billionth time, I wonder why name me after a hospital. A high pitched scream pierces the air and snaps me out of my reverie. I freeze, gloved hands clasped in front of me, forgetting for an instant where I am. There is a gush of blood. It forms a crimson pool on the polythene sheet, then wells up and breaks up into rivulets that zigzag their way to the edge of the bed and drip into a cracked white enamel pail, each successive drop taking longer to trickle down as the blood slowly thickens into dark, glistening, jelly like clots. The space I am standing in feels cramped and claustrophobic. There are three of us in the cubicle, and the bed occupies most of it. Faded mustard colored curtains, which had probably once been a bright yellow, are drawn snugly around us, and above, a ceiling fan rotates slowly, circulating eddies of warm, humid air. The apron tied around me envelops me from neck to ankle and tickles my chin irritatingly. It is made of a stiff green waterproof material and rustles loudly like a silly bag with the slightest move I make. Not that I can move much in these cumbersome white rubber boots, which bear some suspicious looking stains and are several sizes too large for me. The midwife, oblivious to my catatonic state, performs a quick maneuver and looks up beaming, holding something in her hands, and shiny and wriggly and alive. It's a girl. She makes the announcement triumphantly, as if she personally arranged for this to happen. As three miraculously becomes four, the warm, musty smell of fresh blood, mingled with the rank odor of sweat, concentrated in the enclosed space, hits me like a punch, and a black wave of dizziness threatens to engulf me. I will myself not to faint, desperately trying to keep my blood circulating by flexing my knees and ankles. Oh, yes, reality check. I'm in labor ward or the birthing center, as it's now fashionably called, witnessing my first delivery and trying to stop myself from passing out on the floor. Nothing I had seen or read had prepared me for this. The attending midwife had asked me to glove up and assist her, but during the monotony of the preceding hour, my thoughts had drifted. I remember now what led to my daydream. It was the thought of the emerging baby and the names it might be saddled with. The mother, who is lying on the bed with her thighs played out and her feet hooked up in stirrups, seems as shell shocked as me, but at the sight of her bloody offspring, manages to produce a tremulous smile and then collapses back on the pillow, losing further interest in the proceedings. Her long black hair is damp and matted, and beads of sweat dot her forehead and the skin above her lips. She looks young, no more than 19 or 20. A colorful friendship bracelet with threads of red, yellow, and blue, braided in an intricate design, is knotted about her slender wrist. There is no sign of the father. He is redundant at this moment anyway. And this is not one of those modern units that welcome fathers into the birthing process. Thank you very much. I concentrate on staying upright, resisting the urge to escape from the stuffy cubicle, and thankfully the dizziness passes. The baby immediately proceeds to thrash its limbs about and set up a clamor, a series of high pitched, reedy wails, plaintive and persistent. Its wide open mouth dominates the wrinkled, contorted face like a big O, and its body is covered with flecks of blood, mucus, and vernix, the greasy cheese like substance that coats a baby's skin in the last few months of pregnancy. Whoever said babies are beautiful, this one looks like something out of a horror movie. Come, come, the midwife says to me cordially, as if she were inviting me to have a cup of tea. She is one of the senior ones, a witch-like crone with a bushy unibrow, protruding incisors, and a voice like an ambulance siren. Are you going to cut this today or tomorrow? She cackles loudly and hands me a peculiar pair of scissors with blades that look like a parrot's beak, saying, cut here, pointing, of course, to the umbilical cord. I fumble with the instrument and then clumsily position it between the two plastic clips that are clamped on the cord a few inches apart. As I hesitantly press the handles together, she clicks her tongue and exclaims impatiently, Ayo, not like that, harder. With trembling fingers, I squeeze the handles, slicing through the translucent milky gray cord. It is soft and gelatinous, like the tentacle of a giant squid, minus the suckers, and is surprisingly easy to cut. I expect bleeding, but only a few drops of dark blood ooze from the cut end. Thought I'll stop there for that and pick something else.
Okay, that with that, I have one question for you. What inspired you to write Crossmatch? Because I see that novel blends with medical elements, with strong emotions. Uh, I, how would you elaborate it?
When I decided I wanted to start writing, um, I found that what came to my mind were the memories of me doing my medical training. And I thought I wanted to write a medical story. And unlike a lot of medical stories where the hero is always the doctor, I thought why not make it a medical student because they are never thought of. You know, in all these medical dramas, even in films and TV and all, it's the doctor who saves the day, right? So I thought, let me look at the medical student because I think there's a lot going on there. They are a when you're a medical student, you're very vulnerable. And I wanted to bring some of those emotions out because when I look back at my training, I went into medicine, straight after school, not knowing what to expect, right? And sometimes you are faced with situations which are totally unexpected. And I don't think people are prepared for that. And I and after a few years, it's fine. They get hardened and they get used to it. But it's always that first experience which I wanted to bring out. That first time you see a dead body, the first time you go into a operation theater, those are very unique emotions which are soon forgotten because the more you keep doing it, you become used to it. And so I wanted to showcase some of those uh, uh, emotions that this vulnerable group have, these people who start medicine. Honestly, I remember the first day that I went into medical college. We were, asked to queue up, stand outside this room, and we were very excited, chatting and meeting people, a lot of people for the first time from other schools and all that, and we were very happy. And then they opened the doors of this room, and it was freezing in there. And it was the dissecting room, and there were all these slabs, and each slab had a dead body on it, a cadaver. And they said, okay, go and find your body and start cutting. This day one, right? And I was thinking to myself, what? Why did I come here? Like why? Like I wasn't expecting that. But the next week, like you came back the next day, and you came back the next day, and the next week you're like so at home in that room. So that, but I wanted to show that feeling, that first feeling, which is soon forgotten. But and a lot of people who've read my book later, these are like very old doctors and all, and they have told me, I remember how I felt when I first came in, and like, it was very much like what you described. So I was very happy to hear that. So I think that medical students have a lot of things going on which people don't address. And a lot of them can't make it. A lot of them drop out because they can't face this. Many do. But you have to get used to it.
And I've
So that's just
noticed,
an example of why I wanted to put a medical student as the main person in the story.
and yeah, as when I was going through your book, when I was reading your book, with what you're mentioning now, I see that you have embedded those experiences
Yes,
into this
and the
book
other thing I
throughout.
found that is when I was a medical student, um, like people ask you when they know you're studying medicine, so what was it like? What did how was it like when you first saw like for example, when you first saw your first delivery,
Yeah,
or when you first saw did your first operation, or what was it like? And they're very curious. So I think there's a lot of curiosity
indeed.
among
Yes,
non-medical people as to what goes on in the making of a doctor. People are very familiar with doctors and how they work, and especially after the pandemic and all, everyone studied medicine, right? Everyone was a doctor. But nobody knows about how a doctor is made, and the training, and how rough it is sometimes. It's not glamorous at all.
yes, I get that now with what you have
Yeah.
narrated here and all. So, if I ask you, how did you decide on the plot of the novel, the story that goes
Okay.
around?
So now I had decided what I'm going to write about, or in what
Genre.
my story was going to be around. I definitely wanted medicine because, as I said, I had so many memories and I wanted to bring those out. But I wanted a mystery plot. I wanted something, I didn't, there are a lot of people, professionals who write memoirs. Doctors are famous for it. Once they get old and retire, they write their memoirs from the time they entered medical college, and they're really boring. So I did not want to write anything like that. Who would read it? Their family and some other doctors. I wanted something that anyone could read, even a non-medic, and find it interesting. And as I said, I'm a huge fan of mystery um, novels. So that was another challenge. Can I incorporate this and put a mystery plot into this? And that's what I tried to do. So I can't tell you too much about the mystery side of it because I don't want to reveal too much to people who haven't read. But that again came to me while working as a doctor, and those are real. It's a fictional story, that part, but those problems exist. So I decided to put that as the plot. I'm being very guarded here, but I can't give too much away. Was that clear?
That was clear.
So basically, two parts to this book. One was I wanted to tell the medical student's story,
Yeah.
and the other thing is I wanted her to be solving a mystery.
Yeah. So, was there a particular moment or experience or other experiences that sparked in the plots, the situation,
Um,
of the book?
Not, no, there was no particular experience, but as I said, it was a lifetime of
Experiences.
experiences, and it was actually difficult to choose what to put and what not to put because there was so much. You know, you can't put everything. You have to select, and yeah,
Okay. So, are we having any another
yeah. I can
example?
read another
Uh,
passage.
I know everyone's curious about this with the first reading itself.
So for the second passage, I thought I'll talk about the ward round because the ward round is a very integral part of hospital life, right? I don't know what the equivalent for y'all is, probably something in court or something, but it is very formal and um, it's a ritual. And the ward round that takes place every day with the consultant um, going and seeing the patients, it is, well, I'll read it and you can see what it's like. Okay? Yeah. Give me a minute to find it. Sorry, give me a minute. Okay. This is chapter 9 if you want to look at it. Nowhere is the medical hierarchy more evident than on ward rounds. Ward rounds take place daily or sometimes twice a day. On the grand round, which usually takes place once a week, the consultant and his entourage review every patient in the ward in more detail than usual, discussing cases, sorting out problems, and of course, teaching students. The grand ward round is a tradition that is conducted with pomp and ceremony and reminds me of some archaic rite, almost religious in its solemnity. Each participant has their particular role to play in this ritual. The consultant, today Rambo, Rambo is the nickname they have given the consultant, that's not his real name, okay? Could be likened to the high priest presiding over the ceremony. Fussing around him like a stout elderly priestess would be Matron Rani, the senior matron of the trauma unit, in her navy blue uniform, white stockings, and gleaming black patent leather shoes. With her elaborate starched white cap and huge pointy bosom, she looks like a ship in full sail. The young nurses would flutter around like Vestal virgins, eager to please, ready to give the high priest whatever he needed. a stethoscope at this bed, a file or a torch at the next. The orderlies and attendants are the acolytes, carrying the paraphernalia needed for the ceremony and assisting whenever a patient needed to be examined. Whipping off a shirt here, unbuttoning a shirt there. The younger doctors are the novitiates, the smug senior registrar with his beefy arms folded across his broad chest. He will soon be appointed consultant and would then play the main role himself. The new registrar, fresh from the Part 1 qualifying exam, full of knowledge but with little experience. The overworked house officer, shirt crumpled and tie a little crooked, looking harassed and sleep deprived, but in fact the only one who has any idea as to what's going on. And then, of course, there's us, the lowly medical students, lowest in the pecking order, bottom of the food chain. We are neophytes, postulants newly admitted into the sacred order. Even our attire marks us out. The white coats we wear are shorter than the doctor's coats, denoting our lesser status. That's just to give you I think I'm sure you all must be having similar hierarchy as well, right? And starting with the senior most and then the most junior one who is like treated the worst, but probably they are the ones who know what's going on. So it's very similar. So in a ward, the house officer is like the low, not the lowest, the medical students are the lowest, but the house officer is the most junior doctor and he has to do all the dirty work, but he's the one who knows exactly what's going on. And every time you do a ward round, you really see this hierarchy and how they're almost worshipping the consultant. And I mean, I'm sure there must be parallels in law as well.
So you have put your real life experiences into the book for real, like what, what you have explained so
Yes,
far.
yes,
I think
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Okay.
You want to ask any more
Yeah, of course.
questions? And
Yes.
then maybe if there's time, we can do another
Yes,
TP.
of course. So I assume, correct me if I'm wrong, please, the characters which you have included in the book, which we see in the book, are inspired by real people that you have met or the experiences. You already explained about the experiences.
I would say that the characters in the actual story where the mystery happens, they're all totally made up, not based on any real people. But I think the people in the medical profession, I won't say they are copied from real characters, but they are a mix of the characteristics are a mix of various people who taught us and I met along the way. And the other thing about the memories, this was a long time ago when I was a student. It's not only my memories, but it's something like collective memories because me and my colleagues who all went through the course together, whenever we meet, even to this day, you talk about the
Good
good old
days.
days and then the same old stories would be repeated how so and so got blasted by doctors this like the same stories. So th- there's a huge memory bank of incidents and stories that I drew on. So I won't say I certainly didn't use any characters as they were because I don't want to get sued. But a mix of characteristics from different people that I met along the way.
I think that's beautiful. That's beautiful. The way you have crafted each character. So if I ask this question, were there any challenges when you were crafting the novel? Any challenges you faced?
So when I decided, look, you have to, when I decided I want to write a novel, I was like about 50 years old, quite old. And I was a doctor, I hadn't done any writing or anything. And then I thought, okay, so how do I do this? And then what do you do when you don't know what to do and you have to find out information about something?
You research and you look for
Google, right?
Google, yes.
So I turned to the internet because I was too shy to ask people, I want to write a book. How do I do it? Because I don't think it's just simply writing things down in an exercise book. There must be more to it than that. So I actually didn't have any resources. So I turned to the internet and I found a lot of information there. And it's silly, really. I used to Google things like how to write a novel, because I was clueless. And then I discovered there is this thing called creative writing. It is a whole field, and honestly, when I was going to school and all, this thing I don't think it existed. We were never trained in creative writing. We wrote some essays in school, but this whole thing has developed without me knowing it even. And then I discovered, I bought a book on creative writing, and there's a whole lot of resources on the internet. So I just picked up things along the way, and then I realized it's not just writing down things. There is a craft to it. Yeah, there is. If you want to write something, anyone can write anything. But if you want to make it, you're writing something that can be enjoyed by other people, then you have to put some work into it. And that is the craft. So it's like anything, make doing a painting or even cooking a nice meal or something. You have to put some work into it and think about how it's going to look at the end. And so then that's really that really is what kept me occupied. It's not just what's in your head. It's how you make that readable and enjoyable to somebody else and make them want to read it.
I think you already covered what I was going to ask next. I was going to ask whether can anyone write a fiction. So
Yeah,
you have
yeah, just to elaborate on that, no, I mean, I think anyone can write in theory because fiction is just telling a story, right? And we all have done that. People make up stories and tell their children to. When you're a human being, you're always telling stories. When you have at a party, you're telling each other stories. Some of it may be what actually happened to you, but you often, embroider it to make it more interesting, right? You won't just say, I was going in the bus and this man did this. You will say, you won't believe what happened when I was going in the bus. And you try to make your story more interesting. So we are all storytellers
we
by,
all are
we are
storytellers.
human beings. But like I said, if you want your story to be special, to be enjoyed by other people, then you have to put some work into it. And I don't think everyone can do that in the same way that everyone cannot, be produce nice music or dramas or because not everyone is willing to put that effort into it. And if you love that, some people love putting the effort into a particular thing like cooking. So not everyone loves that. So not everyone ends up right, producing something that others would like to read. I mean, it takes, you can ask Shiranti as well, how long, it's not just, oh, I have this story in my head. It'll take a month or two maybe to write it, It's not like that. Because once you write it, you have to go back and see how can I make this better? How does this sentence sound? And it takes years. I mean, I only have the experience of one book. So I can tell you that my book took years. But I think I have spoken to other writers, and they say that Shehan took 10 years to write his second book. Shehan Karunatilak, who won the Booker Prize. So 10 years. So that is the amount of effort he has put into making this something that people would want to read.
Okay. So I think that's.
But in theory, everyone can.
Everybody can. You have to put the effort and try first, as I mentioned before as well. So thank you, Dr. Carmel, for those insightful responses. We'd now like to open the floor to the audience for an interactive session. I know there are questions and thoughts and impressions, as I mentioned before.
Thank you for your questions. They were very good questions.
Thank you. I read through your book and I found this is my, okay, I'll start first.
Yes, of course.
Maybe because I'm a reader. I read your book. So first of all, what I wanted to highlight is that the language that you have used, it doesn't go into our head in a heavy way. I think that's one of the catching points.
I mean, that a lot of people have told me this, and one reason for that may be because I don't have a background in writing or journalism or English literature. I feel that may be the reason that I, I keep the language not too complicated and not too heavy. But I don't know whether that's the
That
actual
has a
reason.
very big impact, I guess. Yes. Anybody like to?
I'll just repeat that question. So, out of curiosity, I want to know when you're giving the characters in your book the names like Rani and a few other names that we came across, is there any mechanism you use to match their personality to their names? Or I'm pretty sure there are a lot of characters that come into play in a book. So, how does the naming process go? Do you have an idea of what the names are going to be beforehand? Or while you write the story, do you come up with the names of these characters?
That's a very good question, Yohani. It's actually one of the more difficult parts of writing a story, putting the names to the characters. And for the less important characters, I just use the pool of real people who I meet, and hope that they don't notice that their name is in the book. But for the main character, especially the protagonist, I feel it should be something special. So, and I deliberately picked an unusual name because I thought the more unusual it is, the more it's going to stick. And if you look at all these famous characters, also, like they are the main protagonist, I think you should take some trouble and find. It doesn't have to be maybe an unusual name, but there should be something about it that sticks in your memory. So for this particular one, I deliberately chose a name like this because it it ties up with the story later on. Her name. So I took a lot of trouble with the main character's name, but the other characters sometimes I have a list, sometimes a list of sometimes obituaries. When I was reading the paper, I see the obituaries and I note some surnames. Because you don't want to pick surnames of people you know well, also, So, because they'll think it's their name, and so I newspapers, and I don't need, I just there's a pool of names out there.
That is something very interesting I heard
It's very
today.
difficult actually when you're writing a story to pick names.
Yeah, thank you.
For me, it's one of the more difficult things.
Any more questions or thoughts again?
Hi, Dr. Miranda.
Hi.
And thanks to the association and the book club for them. If they did not suggest this book, I would have never picked up this book. And if that was the case, I would have missed a great story. So
Oh,
first of
thank you.
all, Dr. Miranda, let me say it's a great story. For me personally, I felt it in my heart for the fact that now I come across uh, great many siblings. I come from a family with uh, many relatives of mine and siblings of mine, my brother, my sister-in-law, and everybody are doctors or medical professionals. So when we get together in these lunches or dinners, they talk about all these logies. So I mean, hematology, a lot of things, gynecology. I don't understand any of this terminology at all. But thanks to your book, since I went through your book, now I hope that I can understand at least some context into what they're talking about and contribute at least a little. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is now I have broken many bones in my life, in my body, and because of that, and I have been uh, I've been a constant benefactor of the government medical faculty, institutions, especially the Colombo General Hospital. And because of that, I've also experienced this ward around. Yes,
Yeah.
ward around. And I've always, thought what was this entourage and what was its Perahara like? And now I have a context about it. Now, so thank you for that as well, because I'm pretty sure that I have more adventures to go on and more bones to break. And so next time,
Hope not.
so next time I know what is going on in the government medical institutions. So that is that. And the other thing is that my brother is a very calm and quiet person. Now he's trained to be a gynecologist. I tried my level best in my life to get under his skin, but I never could. But I took a photograph of the gynecologist, the joke that you're talking about, the gynecologist, and he called me up and he trashed me. So thanks for that as well.
You're welcome. That's very common in medicine. Is you like to trash the other specialties.
Right.
So there is for each specialty there is a joke. I couldn't put all of them, but I put a few.
Thank you. Now, what I want to say finally is that now I'm a person who loves actually those autobiographies, those boring autobiographies. I love to read them. So, of course, Shiranti's book made me fall in love again with the short stories, and your book, of course, made me love again with the novels, especially the fictions, because for a long period of time, I've never touched a fiction. So, thank you for that as well. And my question to you now, when you take a character or a place, you describe this character or a place from the head to the toe, from the nose, from the dress that they're wearing, very vividly. Vivid descriptions, especially this place as well. Many places, many people, and it gets to our head who this person might look like. Why did you do it, and how did you do it?
Why did I do it? It's because when you read a novel, all you have to experience the story is the words on the page. So, and the story is happening in pictures. I mean, when you read a book, it's happening, right, in your head.
Especially with your book.
And when an author is writing a story, that story has been happening in their brain for some time. in pictures. So the only way that I know to get my reader to see that picture which is in my head is to describe it the way that I see it. And sometimes it might seem excessive. I mean, a lot of people have said that you have really described things, in great detail. But for me, that is the only way I know of getting the reader to see what I am experiencing in my head. And what is the second part of your question?
How did you do it?
How did I do it? How did I do it is, I don't know. That is, I think, the craft of writing. You learn it as you go along, because the first time you write a character you describe, then you go back and read it, you think it doesn't conjure up any image, it's not. So I think that is the thing that you learn. And because you don't, I mean, I can't count the number of times I read modifying, changing, editing, because each time you read it, you think of a way you can improve it, make it better. So that is, I think, the how. It's part of this whole thing called the craft of writing. Because now, for example, the first chapter, which is where she sees a delivery for the first time. So the facts are, I mean, I could write, she got up, it was her first day in the labor ward today. So she went to the hospital and entered the labor ward, and there was a woman in labor. So she put on her apron and went to observe her. So those are the facts. But how boring is that, right?
Because it's
But then you write that and you think, how can I make this really interesting? How can I get the person's attention from the first, passage? Then so it's that, like you're thinking, how can I make this passage more interesting? Of course, you can't make the whole novel like that, because then it will be like action-packed and adrenaline, right through. There have to be quiet moments as well. But I think for the beginning, you always need to have, it's nice to have a sort of a dramatic beginning, then you have the attention from the first page.
I must say, the attention to the details, the careful yet beautiful crafting.
Thank you. I think attention to detail, it may be because I'm in the medical field and, it comes naturally to me to describe, because I know it's in my head. So it came very naturally to me, yeah. I think if you all write a legal story and you all describe, these wigs and all, it would be perfect. But I wouldn't be able to do it like that.
Any more questions or thoughts that you'll love to share? Okay, maybe one last question. Okay, a small question. What advice would you give to professionals, especially those in demanding professions, who wish to explore writing or pursue creative work in most simplest way? How to start, maybe?
I think that for me, the creative side, I mean, I'm also a professional, and having this creative outlet is what keeps me sane. And I think it's very good for your mental health as well, when you have something creative to balance maybe very taxing, professional life. So I would always encourage this. I mean, in the Colombo Medical Faculty, for example, in the last 5-6 years, or maybe 6-7 years ago, they started a separate faculty of humanities, because they also had come to realize that just studying medicine alone, you produce very sort of one-dimensional people who only see one thing, and that there's so much more to life. And it's really good because they didn't have it when I was a student, but now they have this Department of Humanity, sorry, and they encourage the students to, like, they even have like a 1 month where they give them, you can choose anything you want which is not medicine and do this. So some people do some art thing, or one student actually came and met me and said, I want to follow you for 1 month. I said, no, you can't follow me for 1 month. But she was interested in writing. So it's very encouraging that they are doing this now. But I always encourage, because for me, I can't just do my work alone. There has to be something there to balance, I think, and I encourage everyone to do that. And the other thing is that somebody told me once that medicine and law are the professions where you see the worst of humanity, right? And there is so much of material there to write about. And that's true when you think about it, because I think we see people at their worst and at their most weakest and most vulnerable, right? Because they can't lie to a doctor or to a lawyer.
You say that.
Yes. So you know exactly you've seen the worst of people, and we also have seen them at their weakest. So there's a lot of material there.
Well, that's the beauty of literature, the creative arts, right? So this brings us to the end of the second session of the BASL book reading and Lawyers Book Club. On behalf of the member networking committee, I would like to extend our heartfelt thanks to Dr. Carmel Miranda for joining us today, and so for generously sharing her time, insights, and the remarkable journey behind Crossmatch. It has been truly inspiring to hear from someone who seamlessly bridges the worlds of medicine or science and literature. We have a small token of appreciation for you today for dedicating your time for us in this engaging session. I would like to invite a member of the networking committee to present you a small token of appreciation.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. It was very interesting. And I am really happy that you all have this Lawyers Book Club, and I wish you all the best with future sessions.
Thank you very much. And a warm thank you also goes out to the member networking committee for organizing this session, as Dr. Miranda mentioned, and to all of you, our members, for taking the time to be a part of this discussion. Your engagement is what makes this initiative meaningful. If anyone here wish to have their own copy of this beautiful work by Dr. Miranda, if you don't have a copy yet, yes, you can purchase a book on your way out. And please note that the next book, our upcoming session, will be announced soon. With that, until then, thank you and have a lovely evening.